Good morning. This is conspiracy theorist Richard Hooke, and I wanted to do another video about Oswald's activities, Lee Oswald's activities on November 22nd, 1963. Actually, this is part 3. I've already done 2, but I wanted to go into a little more detail this morning just to dispel some of the myths. It occurs to me this might be a valuable thing to do. So here we go. It's going to be extremely detailed, so if that's not for you, you should just get out right now, okay? Okay, now, first of all, in part 2, I covered Oswald's activities up until 12:30 when he was in the doorway watching JFK get shot. Okay, he was in the doorway. He had bailed from the sniper's nest approximately 2 minutes prior to the shooting, so he didn't do any shooting, and he came down into the doorway. On the 6th floor, immediately after Ruth Ann Martinez brought her arm down and Loy Factor and Mac Wallace fired the first shots, Factor into the street and Wallace into JFK's back, Factor and Ruth Ann bailed and ran down the stairs. Factor stashed his 7.65 Mauser rifle right there on the 6th floor under the boxes. And that was the first rifle found by the Dallas police. It was the one used by Loy Factor. He stashed it on the 6th floor. So after the limo came to a complete stop and the president had been executed by U.S. intelligence agents with multiple hit teams, it was speeding toward the triple underpass. Oswald, as it was speeding toward the triple underpass, Oswald, Factor, and Ruth Ann were already down the stairs. They were already down when Victoria Adams and Sandra Stiles, Victoria Adams, the infamous girl on the stairs from the great conspiracy research book by Barry Ernst, she didn't spot Oswald on the stairs because he was already down beforehand, and actually Factor and Ruth Ann were already down too when Victoria Adams and Sandra Stiles came down from the 4th floor when the car was speeding towards the triple underpass. And that's why the stairs were empty when she came down. So after watching JFK get murdered at 12:30, Oswald, he went back inside the front door is what he did. Okay, and he went back to the domino room in the northeast corner of the 1st floor. Okay, so... well, anyway, it's kind of tough to see, but it's back in the corner behind the snipers, in the opposite corner on Houston Street behind the sniper's nest. Oswald went back towards the domino room in the back corner of the 1st floor is where he went. And after 90 seconds, Officer Baker and Superintendent Truly, they got there, and they encountered Oswald near the front of the domino room on the 1st floor. This is what actually happened. Okay, Baker had drew his pistol on Oswald, and he asked Mr. Truly if Lee Oswald worked there, and Mr. Truly said that Oswald did, and then they let Lee go. It was all witnessed. This encounter on the 1st floor by the domino room was witnessed by TSBD Vice President Ocas V. Campbell. So it's all documented, although they tried to cover that up later and move it up to the 2nd floor to make it closer to the sniper's nest, to make it seem like he could have been up there during the shooting and came down. But the truth of the matter is he was in the doorway and he went back in the corner, so he didn't come down from the sniper's nest after the shooting at all because he wasn't up there, okay? He had already come down before the shooting, was in the doorway, and then came back by the domino room when he was accosted by Truly and Baker. So it was really dark inside the TSBD at that time because the conspirators had cut the power shortly before the shooting when JFK's limo was coming up Houston Street. And I believe there's a very good chance it was Buwessy Frazier who cut the power. And the reason I say that is he has a YouTube video saying he usually spent his lunchtime down in the basement, okay, reading kids' books down in the basement. And as a matter of fact, we don't see Frazier anywhere in Altkin 6. He said he was there and he saw who was where, but the question is, where was he? Because I don't see Frazier. He's not in Altkin 6 at all. That's the whole thing. He's never pointed out where he is because he isn't there. He says he was back in the dark. Well, anybody could be back in the dark. I mean, I could have been there, but I was in the 2nd grade. But how's anybody going to prove it one way or the other? So I question Frazier, and being that now I know he's involved in the conspiracy, and I can account for everybody else, either out in the street or on the doorway, in the doorway or up on the 6th floor, and I can't account for Frazier and the African-American employees. We know they weren't involved in this thing at all. So there's only a couple of guys it could be. I mean, most of them are white guys in their 20s, and Frazier's the one that's left. So he very possibly cut that power. So anyway, Truly, Baker, and Otis V. Campbell, they let Oswald go, and then so Oswald, he walked back out towards the front doorway is what he did. Okay, and this is all in my book, The Path Toward Truth, available at Amazon Books in more detail with extreme detail and references, but we're just going to cover it generally here. And then what happened next is after Oswald had back out to the door, Roy Truly, he looked up the elevator shafts from the 1st floor, and he noticed that the elevators were both locked on the 5th floor. Okay, he noticed that. Okay, and then he and Officer Baker began to come up the stairs. And as they were coming up the stairs, then the power came back on. Okay, on their way up the stairs. So what happened is then when Truly arrived on the 5th floor, he noticed one of the elevators was gone. And that was because when Truly and Officer Baker were heading up the stairs, Malcolm Wallace took one elevator down and he got away. And he went out the back door with his 30-06. So Baker and Truly came up the stairs and they let Wallace escape on an elevator down and out the back. I mean, that's what happened, okay? Okay, so as Oswald headed out the front door, he encountered a couple of reporters, or I don't know, they're CIA agents or something. But anyway, they asked for where the payphone was, and Oswald pointed it out to them. And then he continued into the front doorway, and he spotted Jack Ruby, who was coming up from the kill zone, because immediately after the shooting, Ruby had run down there and was inspecting the kill zone, and then he came back. So he was coming back across the Elm Street extension. Ruby caught Oswald's eye, motioned his head, and they went over by the corner of Houston and Elm. And basically, at that point, Jack Ruby slipped Lee Oswald a small pistol, a .38 revolver with a bent firing pin. So actually, it wasn't going to work. But it was witnessed. This was witnessed by Lucy Lopez, an employee of the Dow Tex building, who was up in the window there looking down. And she saw Ruby slip Oswald the pistol. And she was familiar with Oswald. She'd talked to him in passing, and their jobs there just right across the street. So Lucy Lopez witnessed Ruby give Oswald the pistol, and there's an FBI report on it, which was covered up, of course, because the Warren Commission wanted to say that Oswald got the gun from his rooming house, which wasn't true. He got it from Ruby, but then they were going to deny that he even knew Ruby at all, so they couldn't have that. But Oswald got the gun from Ruby at about 12:38 right there at Houston and Elm. So basically, after that, Ruby and Oswald went up the Elm Street extension by Ruby's green pickup that he used for gun running. It was parked over there by the rail yard. Okay, and they were standing over by Ruby's green pickup. We've got a black and white photo, and we know it's the pickup. Ruby's next to it and has like a little camper shell in the back where you can put like a canvas cover over the guns, the truck full of guns when you happen to be running guns. So basically, the Latino driver that was driving the light green Ruth Payne's Nash Rambler wagon at 12:40, Oswald, he spotted that car coming by the northern grassy knoll and whistled it down. Okay, it was driving by the northern grassy knoll, and Oswald ran across and jumped in. Okay, and the Latino driver had initially picked up Frank Sturgis. Actually, Sturgis got in by the signal tower. He was the CIA hit team manager, and he had walked back across the rail yard by the signal tower. And then they had driven back behind the TSPD looking for Oswald. But Oswald missed it the first time because he was inside in his encounter with Officer Baker and Roy Truly. So they missed Oswald on the first opportunity for pickup. And the car drove, made a right on Houston Street, went down Houston Street, made a left on Record, and went up Record Street and parked and waited. This is what he was instructed to do, apparently. And Malcolm Wallace, as we know, as I just explained, he exited the TSBD. He was the last one out from the 6th floor. He came down when Truly and Baker went up the stairs. Malcolm Wallace, he came out the back. He went up Houston Street and then made a left on Record Street, and he got into the Rambler. Okay, so he knew the Rambler was going to be over there. He got into the Rambler, and he instructed the Latino driver and Sturgis to circle around back and make another pass to try and pick up Lee Oswald. So that's what they did. This was actually Malcolm Wallace running up Houston Street and on Record to the Rambler was witnessed by Randolph Carr, an employee of one of the buildings there, who actually had seen Wallace up on the 6th floor before the shooting, because he noticed that there was a man up there in horn-rimmed glasses with kind of dark skin, which Wallace had. Sometimes they say he could even pass as a Cuban. It was heavy set with horn-rimmed glasses and a brown sport coat. And Randolph Carr recognized down on the street that this was the same guy coming down and getting into the Rambler wagon, the man with the horn-rimmed glasses. So as Oswald got in the Rambler at 12:40 in front of the TSBD, he was witnessed by Dallas Deputy Sheriff Roger Craig, okay, who made a personal ID of Oswald as definitely having been the man who got into the light green Rambler with a chrome luggage rack with out-of-state license plates. Roger Craig, he noticed all that. He noticed it was Oswald, that it was a Nash Rambler, light green, the chrome luggage rack with out-of-state plates. They were not the same color as the Texas license plate, is what he noticed. And then, so we know for sure that Lee Oswald did not run 7 blocks up Elm Street towards the downtown to get on any bus and take any cab. That was a complete fabrication. There was no bus and cab ride by Oswald. He left Dealey Plaza. He was picked up by Ruth Payne's wagon that she had given to the Oswald's family, which originally it came from Clayshaw, New Orleans. But there wasn't any bus and cab ride. All the lineups were fabricated. Many of the witnesses and participants of these supposed bus and cab ride, they didn't live more than another year or two later. But the bus and cab ride was a complete fabrication by the conspirators to make it show that Oswald was acting alone. And it's kind of ridiculous. I mean, who would shoot the president and then flee on public transportation? It's the most ridiculous thing imaginable. He didn't do it. He wasn't acting alone. It was a massive conspiracy by the CIA with dozens of people involved. No bus and cab ride, picked up by the wagon. And they had to show he was acting alone, and they had to get him to Oak Cliff. They had to get Oswald to Oak Cliff in time to frame him for the murder of Dallas policeman J.D. Tippit, which Oswald didn't do. But I'll cover that in my next video. They framed Lee Oswald for that to try and make the case even stronger that he shot the president, which he didn't do that. So if you didn't shoot the president, then what would he have any interest in shooting any policeman for? It just didn't happen. So thank you very much. I'll talk to you later.